Outdoor adventures are thrilling, but they can also be deadly. In this video, we'll explore 5 real stories of the most shocking deaths in the history of outdoor adventures. Events that remind us of the risks people take when pushing their limits in the wild. On July 27, 2023, 27-year-old Muhammad Hassan, a porter from Pakistan, faced unimaginable circumstances on Karakoram 2, the world's second highest and one of its most treacherous peaks. Known for its steep climbs, brutal weather, and unpredictable conditions, Karakoram 2 tests even the most experienced climbers. But Hassan wasn't there for fame or glory. He was trying to support his wife, 3 children, and elderly grandmother by working as a porter for the Layla Peak expedition. Hassan had recently joined the team as part of the rope-fixing crew, a critical yet dangerous role in any large expedition. Karakoram 2's bottleneck, a narrow section just below the towering Great Serac, is notorious for its deadly avalanches and technical challenges. On that night, around 2:30 a.m., Hassan joined dozens of climbers inching their way up the bottleneck, some aiming for records, others simply hoping to reach the summit. However, Hassan wasn't adequately prepared for such an extreme climb. His gear was insufficient, and he lacked proper high-altitude training. Despite warnings from experienced climbers and Sherpas, he pushed on, determined to fulfill his role. While navigating the bottleneck, Hassan slipped and fell, ending up trapped upside down at over 8,000 meters above sea level. The thin air, freezing temperatures, and lack of oxygen quickly worsened his condition. His oxygen mask broke, leaving him unable to move or speak, and he was in severe pain. Despite his dire state, dozens of climbers passed him, focused on their ascent and unwilling or unable to help. 2 individuals, Tenjin Sherpa and cameraman Gabriel Tarso, made attempts to help. Tenjin kept Hassan conscious for a while, but with worsening weather and limited resources, he was forced to abandon his efforts. Tarso, struggling with his oxygen supply, also had to leave. Meanwhile, other climbers continued their push for the summit, stepping over Hassan's motionless body as they climbed. Footage from Austrian mountaineer Philipp Flamig later revealed that Hassan was still alive hours after his fall. Despite this, no coordinated rescue effort was made. Norwegian climber Kristin Harila, who was on a record-setting mission to climb all 14 peaks over 8,000 meters, stated that her team attempted to help, but found the conditions too challenging. After Hassan's fall, Harila and her group reached the summit and celebrated, drawing sharp criticism for their actions. The lack of assistance sparked outrage within the mountaineering community and beyond. Flamig's drone footage highlighted the indifference shown by many climbers, while Wilhelm Steindl, another mountaineer, condemned the failure to organize a rescue. Steindl, who had turned back earlier due to dangerous conditions, later started a fundraiser for Hassan's family, raising over $170,000 to support his widow and children. The incident exposed deep flaws in high-altitude mountaineering. Karakoram 2's extreme environment makes rescues nearly impossible, but Hassan's story raised questions about priorities on the mountain. Would he have received help if he had been a Western climber instead of a local porter? Many argued that systemic bias played a role in the lack of action. The tragedy also led to calls for change. Layla Peak Expeditions, the company responsible for Hassan's trip, was banned for 2 years for its negligence. Efforts are now underway to improve safety measures, provide better training for porters, and ensure accountability from expedition companies and climbers alike. Hassan's death was not only a personal loss, but an example of the risks faced by porters on these dangerous climbs. His story has reignited discussions about the ethical responsibilities of climbers and the need for systemic reforms in mountaineering. Though the mountain claimed his life, Hassan's story has shed light on the disparities and dangers faced by those who make these expeditions possible. His legacy now serves as a call for greater humanity and accountability in the world of extreme climbing. It was August 9, 1989, in the Stubai Alps of Austria. Duncan McPherson, a 23-year-old former hockey player from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, set out for a solo adventure. The weather was foggy, the slopes were quiet, and Duncan planned to try snowboarding for the first time. Duncan was known for his tough, determined attitude on the ice. Nicknamed McPherson, he played junior hockey for the Western Hockey League's Saskatoon Blades and was drafted by the New York Islanders as the 20th overall pick in the 1984 National Hockey League entry draft. However, injuries derailed his promising career. By age 23, his body was worn down, and his hockey days were behind him. Without a college degree, Duncan was unsure of his future. That summer, an opportunity arose when Ron Dixon, a Scottish businessman, invited him to coach and play for the Tayside Tigers, a minor league hockey team. Excited about this fresh start, Duncan decided to travel through Europe before beginning his new role. He planned to catch up with old friends along the way. On August 9th, Duncan borrowed a car from his former teammate, George Pesuit, and drove to the Stubai Alps. He checked into a hostel and planned to snowboard the next day. At the resort, he spoke with a worker named Walter, explaining his plans. Despite the poor weather and limited visibility, Duncan was eager to try the sport. That was the last time anyone saw him. When Duncan missed his meeting in Dundee on August 12th, his family and friends grew concerned. Austrian authorities initially dismissed the case, suggesting he might have changed his plans. However, his family insisted something was wrong. 6 weeks later, Duncan's red Opel hatchback was found in the resort parking lot. His belongings, including his passport, were untouched. Despite efforts to locate him, there were no leads. Duncan's parents, Bob and Linda, dedicated years to searching for answers. They visited the Alps 9 times, hired private investigators, and sought help from media outlets. For over a decade, they found no trace of their son. In 2003, 14 years after Duncan's disappearance, a worker at the Stubai Glacier Resort noticed a glove sticking out of the snow on the Schaufelferner Glacier. Upon pulling the glove, they discovered a body encased in ice. It was Duncan McPherson. The glacier had preserved his remains, and his clothing and wallet confirmed his identity. His broken snowboard was still strapped to his back. Authorities determined Duncan had likely been trapped in the glacier since 1989. His body showed severe injuries, a shattered femur, severed limbs, and multiple broken bones. These injuries raised questions about what had happened to him. The initial theory suggested that Duncan may have fallen into a crevasse while snowboarding and succumbed to his injuries. However, the extent of the trauma didn't align with a simple fall. Another possibility, supported by Canadian pathologists, was that a snowcat, a machine used to groom ski slopes, had accidentally run over him in the foggy conditions. The damage to Duncan's body and snowboard seemed consistent with this scenario. It was also speculated that someone at the resort may have tried to hide his body to avoid scrutiny. An alternate theory suggested that the glacier's natural movement over 14 years caused additional damage to Duncan's remains. However, experts noted that the injuries were too severe to be solely explained by shifting snow and ice. Further investigation revealed troubling inconsistencies. The resort had claimed Duncan's snowboard was returned earlier, but it was found with his body. His car remained in the parking lot for weeks without proper investigation. These discrepancies raised suspicions of a potential cover-up, possibly to protect the resort's reputation. More than 30 years after Duncan's death, the true events remain unclear. Was it a tragic accident, or was foul play involved? Did someone intentionally hide the truth? Duncan's family continues to seek closure, but many questions remain unanswered. Though officially labeled an accident, the circumstances of Duncan McPherson's disappearance leave a haunting mystery behind. It was a Saturday afternoon in late March 2024 in El Dorado, Northern California. Talon and Wyatt Brooks, aged 21 and 18, were setting out for one of their usual adventures. The brothers, passionate outdoorsmen, were searching for deer antler sheds in the hills near Georgetown, a hobby they enjoyed every spring. They loved nature and had spent countless hours together exploring the wilderness, which had strengthened their bond. Talon, the older brother, worked with his father painting houses and cutting firewood. He enjoyed fishing and playing guitar. Wyatt, the younger brother, was training to become a firefighter, loved baseball, and was an enthusiastic bow hunter. The day began like any other. but it soon turned into a nightmare. As the brothers walked along a remote dirt road, the peace was shattered when they spotted a mountain lion approaching. They tried to follow standard safety advice, making themselves look larger, shouting, and even throwing a backpack to scare the animal away. However, the mountain lion didn't retreat. Instead, it charged, launching a sudden attack. The lion first pounced on Wyatt, pinning him down and biting his face. Wyatt fought to escape while Talon rushed to his aid, hitting the lion to free his brother. Wyatt managed to get on top of the lion briefly, but it quickly shifted its focus to Talon. The animal attacked Talon, gripping his throat as his brother, despite his severe injuries, tried desperately to intervene. Realizing he couldn't save Talon alone, Wyatt, severely injured, made the difficult decision to find help. Covered in blood and immense pain, he stumbled to their car to call 911. Wyatt explained the situation to the dispatcher, his voice trembling with urgency. After making the call, he returned to the attack site, but by then, Talon and the lion were gone. Wyatt could only wait for authorities to arrive. When deputies reached the scene, they found Talon's body near the lion, which fled when warning shots were fired. Tragically, Talon had not survived. The authorities later located and euthanized the mountain lion responsible for the attack. Deoxyribonucleic acid analysis confirmed it was the same animal that attacked the brothers. The Brooks family was devastated by the loss of Talon, but grateful that Wyatt survived. They described Talon as a kind and gentle soul who loved nature, music, and spending time with family. Wyatt was taken to the hospital with severe injuries to his face and neck, requiring reconstructive surgery. Despite the trauma, he showed remarkable resilience and is now focused on recovery and continuing his firefighter training. The tragedy has sparked conversations about wildlife management in California. Malcolm Brooks, the brothers' uncle, has spoken out about the state's mountain lion protection laws, particularly Proposition 117. This law, passed in 1990, classifies mountain lions as a specially protected species, restricting actions against them. Malcolm argues that while the law aims to protect wildlife, it doesn't account for the growing risk to human safety, as human and wildlife territories increasingly overlap. He believes changes are needed to prevent future incidents. Despite their knowledge of mountain lion safety, Talon and Wyatt's precautions weren't enough to stop the attack. Wildlife experts emphasize that such incidents are extremely rare. The attack marked the first fatal mountain lion encounter in California since 2004, and the first in El Dorado County since 1994. Experts note that mountain lions typically avoid humans, but can become aggressive if food is scarce or if they feel threatened. The mountain lion involved in this incident, a 90-pound male in healthy condition, acted unpredictably. While researchers continue to study these creatures' behavior, the Brooks family is left mourning their loss. They are determined to raise awareness and advocate for measures to reduce the risk of future attacks. Wyatt, still healing physically and emotionally, is determined to honor his brother's memory. The Brooks family, though deeply grieving, stands proud of Talon and Wyatt's bravery and their love for the outdoors. They are supporting Wyatt as he recovers, holding on to the memories of Talon and the special bond the brothers shared. It was October 8, 2024, in Yosemite National Park, California. Harry Partington, a 22-year-old adventurer from Perth, Australia, was hiking the 4-mile trail when an unexpected tragedy occurred. Known for his love of nature and exploring the world, Harry was an experienced hiker who often shared photos and stories of his adventures on social media. This trip to Yosemite was meant to be another memorable journey, but it ended in heartbreak. The 4-mile trail is famous for its breathtaking views, but also its challenges. It stretches to 4.8 miles and climbs over 3,000 feet, offering sights of landmarks like El Capitan, Yosemite Falls, and Half Dome. Despite its popularity, the trail requires focus and stamina due to its steep and uneven terrain. On this day, Harry was hiking alone in the afternoon. Around 2:30 p.m. near Union Point at an elevation of about 6,300 feet, strong winds and light rain created hazardous conditions. Suddenly, a large tree, uprooted by the gusts, fell onto the trail. Tragically, Harry was struck and fatally injured. Nearby, a solo hiker from Germany was also hit by a falling tree. She survived but sustained serious injuries that required airlifting to a hospital. Her condition was not publicly disclosed. Emergency crews quickly responded to the scene. Park officials, paramedics, firefighters, and search and rescue teams worked together, using helicopters to assist injured hikers and manage the situation. For many visitors, the sight of helicopters and emergency personnel was alarming. Kelly Kennedy Bentley, a tourist waiting for her family at the trailhead, shared her concern upon seeing the rescue efforts. While relieved her family was unharmed, she was deeply affected by the nearby tragedy. The incident led to the temporary closure of the 4-mile trail. Visitors were kept at a distance as responders carried out their work. Witnesses described the chaotic scene, with helicopters flying back and forth and at least 30 emergency personnel on site. Harry's death was not the only recent tragedy in Yosemite. Just weeks earlier, the body of Kirk Thomas Olson, a former park ranger, was found near the Ostrander Lake Trail after he had been missing for 3 weeks. These incidents highlight the unpredictability of wilderness hiking, even in well-known parks. Since its establishment in 1890, over 1,300 people have died in Yosemite, many while hiking alone or encountering unforeseen dangers. The Mariposa County Sheriff's Office announced that an autopsy would be conducted to confirm Harry's cause of death. Though the falling tree was the primary factor, such incidents involving what experts call hazard trees are rare, but remain a recognized risk in forested areas. For Harry's loved ones, his sudden passing was devastating. Tributes poured in on social media, with friends remembering his adventurous spirit and love for travel. Victor Markey, a close friend, expressed that Harry's love of travel had taken him further than anyone could reach, but his memories would live on in the minds and hearts of those he had connected with. He added that Harry would be deeply missed by their group. Harry's story reminds us of the risks inherent in exploring the wilderness. Despite being an experienced hiker, he faced a danger that no amount of preparation could prevent. Nature, while awe-inspiring, can also be unpredictable, and this tragic event is a reminder of the need to remain cautious, even in the most beautiful of settings. It was Tuesday, July 18, 2023, when 71-year-old Steve Curry went on what would be his last hike in Death Valley National Park, one of the hottest and most challenging environments in the world. Located in southeastern California, this desert region is infamous for its extreme heat, often exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius. On this day, temperatures reached a scorching 121 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 degrees Celsius. Steve, a retired electrician from Sunland, California, was no stranger to outdoor adventures. His love for hiking, rock climbing, and mountain biking had defined much of his life. Over the years, he had undergone wilderness training and taken on many challenging terrains. For him, the harsh desert was another adventure, not a deterrent. That day, Steve planned to hike from Golden Canyon to Zabriskie Point, a popular yet difficult trail. Despite the unforgiving summer heat, the beauty of the desert landscape drew him in. Earlier that morning at Zabriskie Point, Steve had spoken to a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. He stood in the shade, covered in sunscreen and wearing a sun hat, casually acknowledging the brutal heat. Despite the extreme conditions, he approached the strenuous hike with a sense of determination, seeing no reason not to attempt it. By 3:40 p.m., tragedy struck. After completing his hike, Steve was found unresponsive near a restroom at the Golden Canyon trailhead. A fellow hiker noticed his condition and called for help. Park rangers and first responders arrived quickly, performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation and using an automated defibrillator. Despite their efforts, Steve could not be revived and was pronounced deceased at the scene. The National Park Service and the Inyo County Sheriff's Office investigated the incident, suspecting his death was related to the extreme heat. At Furnace Creek, temperatures had reached 121 degrees Fahrenheit, but experts believed the heat inside Golden Canyon was even more intense due to the canyon walls radiating the sun's energy. In such conditions, the risk of heat-related illness rises significantly. Steve's passing was one of several tragic incidents in the United States national parks, during the summer of 2023. Just days earlier, on July 5th, a man was found lifeless in his car in Death Valley after his air conditioning failed. Around the same time, a teenager in Alaska's Kenai Fjords National Park and a man in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park also lost their lives under distressing circumstances. Steve had been determined to complete his hike, even declining offers for assistance earlier that day. Some hikers at Zabriskie Point had offered him a ride or a place to cool off in their air-conditioned vehicles, but Steve politely refused, wanting to finish the trail on his own. Known for his adventurous spirit, he had often pushed himself to prove his resilience and keep up with younger hikers, even at 71. Back at home, his wife, Rima, was unaware of his plans to visit Death Valley that day. The couple had been married for nearly 30 years, and while Rima didn't share his enthusiasm for hiking, she had always supported his passion for the outdoors. When he didn't return that evening, she began to worry. It wasn't until 2 days later that she learned the devastating news from the coroner's office. Rima described Steve as a warm and adventurous person with a deep love for nature. She reflected on their life together, envisioning them growing old side by side, sharing quiet moments on a porch. She felt heartbreak and disbelief over his decision to embark on such a challenging hike without informing anyone of his plans. Steve's death occurred during a severe heat wave that had gripped the southwestern United States for weeks. Death Valley's temperatures had consistently surpassed 110 degrees Fahrenheit, or 43 degrees Celsius, creating hazardous conditions for even the most experienced outdoors enthusiasts. Despite warnings from the National Park Service advising visitors to avoid strenuous activities during peak heat, many continued to underestimate the dangers. Although Steve had taken precautions, such as using sunscreen, carrying water, and wearing protective clothing, the intensity of the heat proved overwhelming. Once the body's core temperature rises above 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, heat-related illness can set in rapidly, particularly in an environment as harsh as Death Valley. Steve Curry's story is an example of how unpredictable and unforgiving nature can be. Even with preparation and experience, the extreme heat proved too much for his body to handle.